Good morning from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. President Obama returns to Los Angeles today for a celebrity-studded concert and fundraiser. And Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez faces what might be his biggest electoral challenge to date as Venezuelans go to the polls in today's presidential election there. Right now, joining me today, we have Congressman Peter Welch, Democrat from Vermont, Chris Rabb, author of Invisible Capital, How Unseen Forces Shape Entrepreneurial Opportunity, and adjunct professor at the Fox School of Business at Temple University, Ro Khanna, author of Entrepreneurial Nation, Why Manufacturing is Still Key to America's Future, and former Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Obama Commerce Department, and my colleague, J.J. Ramberg, co-author of the new book, It's Your Business, 183 Essential Tips That Will Transform Your Small Business. I feel bad for the 184th tip. And host of MSNBC's Your Business, which precedes us on Sunday morning, so you look familiar to our viewership, I am sure. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. If there has been one hero of this presidential election, it has been the mythic small businessman. Republicans dedicated their entire convention to the small business owner with the theme, We Built This, and Democrats rarely miss an opportunity to tout how their policies would help small businesses. This dynamic was on full display in Wednesday night's presidential debate, where the words small business were mentioned over 25 times.
Make sure that we're helping small businesses.
Champion small business. A number of small businesses, small business people. I know what it takes to get small business growing, helping small business, because small business.
Encouraging small business growth. Lowered taxes for small businesses through small businesses of small business. 97% of small businesses.
It's small business.
Focusing on small businesses.
A guy who has a very small business. Successful small businesses. These small businesses.
Those small businesses.
But all the praise for small businesses and their owners obscures the big questions we should ask. What exactly counts as a small business, and what is their role in the U.S. economy? It turns out that many of these small businesses talked about by political elites are anything but small. In order to avoid paying corporate income taxes, many business owners use pass-through entities. Sole proprietorships, limited liability companies, and so-called S-corporations allow companies with a limited number of owners to file no corporate taxes and pass profits through to the owners. The owners then file the profits on their individual tax returns, making the term small business, in some cases, more about the number of owners rather than anything else. As a result, these small business owners include partners in hedge funds, private equity shops, and law firms. And as President Obama pointed out during the debate, also Donald Trump.
Under Governor Romney's definition, there are a whole bunch of millionaires and billionaires who are small businesses. Donald Trump is a small business. And I know Donald Trump doesn't like to think of himself as small anything, but that's how you define small businesses if you're getting business income.
All right, this term is driving me nuts. I got to be honest. It has become so central. Everybody celebrates small business. It seems to me a term in search of an actual definition. It also seems that there is no actual agreed upon definition, so it could mean anything, basically. It's like saying workers, and workers includes hedge fund managers and janitors because they both work for a living, but that's not a useful concept in any way. And it also seems reverse engineered to score some political point, right? It seems like it begins as it's business, but it's small. Like that, it's great, right? Like it's not big business. That big business is bad, but it's business. It's not the state, the public sector. It's everything we love as Americans because it's small, but it's business. What is a small business?
Yeah, and it's completely misrepresented in many ways. The effect on small business. People use the term because it's easy to get behind small business, right? Nobody wants to go out there and say I'm against small business, and so it's easy to go out there and say this helps or this hurts small business. But in terms of the actual definition, I mean, if you look at the SBA, it's under 500 people. And I think
employees.
Under 500 employees. I think all of us at this table can agree that if you have 499 employees, you do not have the same needs as somebody who has 4 employees. And so it gets very confusing.
I think the part of the reason of the force of the concept is that I think about the laundromat or the diner down the corner from my block that I love. And I love the owner and I love the people that work there. And I don't know, they probably have 12 employees or something. And it's like, you're great. You guys are great. I want everything to help you in the policy standpoint. But that's not necessarily what we're talking about.
Right, but we also have people in the same community who, let's say it's a Latina who employs people from the community, and it's a predatory lender. That's a small business too.
Right.
I really don't like predatory lenders.
Right.
That's just me, you know.
Right.
But that's a small business
a very good
too.
point.
So we have to get beyond the terms. I say, starting with this show, we have a moratorium on the term small business because, as a guy, I like unicorns.
Okay.
But I don't say I like unicorns with horns.
Right.
Because that's a given,
right.
Okay? So it's the same with small business. 99.7% of businesses are technically small business based on the government, right?
Based on the less than 500 employees.
Fewer than 500 employees, exactly, right. So you could fit all of the CEOs of firms over 500 employees in Madison Square Garden. And the rest of the businesses could fit in for the population of South Carolina, more or less.
Wow.
It's massively different. You're talking about roughly 18,000 people who run businesses more than 500. That's very small compared to the millions of businesses that generally are having a very hard time. So it's not a matter of bigness or smallness. Ultimately, it should be about those businesses that help sustain communities versus those that prey on them.
Isn't this just, Congressman, it strikes me this has just become one of these things that's just like political cant, right? I mean, you're never going to get up in the well of the House and say, I proudly bring before today this bill that is really going to stick it to small businesses. Because but if you say this bill is going to be great for small businesses, whether or not that's the case, then you give it this kind of patina of legitimacy.
Well, you're right in both counts. I'm not going to stick it to small. But, it's not a term in search of definition. It's a term to avoid definition.
Yes.
That's the deal, because everybody wants to be, quote, for business. But the reality is that some small businesses get the job done, but most of the time when you're talking small business, it is the sense of it, I think, is that it's people who are in the business that they're running. The owner, occupier, they're actually there getting their hands dirty, getting the job done. But the truth is that we need big business and small business. And in fact, small business does very well if some of the big businesses are doing well as well. And there's an unwillingness to take on the definition, what the role of government is in big business in restraining anti-competitive practices, predatory practices. But you really do need both. And in fact, it really should be much more part of how do we build an economy that's sustainable, that helps build communities, and then what's the role of government in?
In the debate, I think what you saw is Mitt Romney can no longer defend tax cuts for the rich. So he wants to say, well, I'm not really for tax cuts for the rich. I'm for tax cuts for small business.
Oh, yes, right. That's why it's doing the work it's been designed.
Right. But look at the definition. Under the definition of small business,
hold that thought. Let me play Mitt Romney making exactly this case, right? Which he basically says, you want to raise taxes, top marginal rates. That's fine because you think you're going to stick it to rich people, but really you're going to stick it to the beloved small business owner.
Right.
Check it out.
Mr. President, you're absolutely right, which is that with regards to 97% of the businesses are not taxed at the 35% tax rate. They're taxed at a lower rate. But those businesses that are in the last 3% of businesses happen to employ half of all the people who work in small business.
Okay, please respond to that, because there is so much nonsense in that little bit of sound.
Well, first of all, the statistic that it employs half is just ridiculous. But let's look at this really carefully. Under that definition of small business, I'm a business. Why? Because I've written a book. I get royalties on the book. That's business income. So if Mitt Romney cuts my taxes, suddenly I'll have more money to come from Silicon Valley to travel to New York to be on your show. I'm not going to go and hire anyone.
Right.
So this idea that cutting the taxes is going to lead to job growth is absurd. And in contrast, you have the president saying, I'm for tax cuts too, but I am going to give tax cuts if you actually hire someone.
Let's establish one thing first, though, just because it can get my brain was soup as I was trying to sort through all of these different definitions. The SBA, the Small Business Administration, defines small businesses as with employers less than 500 or less employees, right? So if you're qualifying for a small business loan. That's not the definition that's being used here. The definition that's being used here is actually a tax status, right? In this study.
Yes, and this is where the fact is wrong. So
yes, thank you.
All of people who have pass-through income, so you have a kind of company that's set up so that you're not taxed at the corporate rate, you're taxed at the personal rate. Those people employ half of the Americans that he's talking about.
Half of the people employed by small businesses. Right.
It's not the 3% that he's talking about. The 3% employ a small percentage of that.
Right.
So when he's talking about 54%.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
See, he's mixing up. It comes from an Ernst & Young study, and they sort of mixed
An
up
Ernst &
the
Young
facts there.
study that was commissioned by the S Corporation Trade Group, okay? I was reading the study last night.
Right, but the study still says the correct thing. It's all of these corporations with pass-through.
Right. I just want to make the point that the study that is the bedrock for these statistics about this thing about small businesses and their job creation potential, or all these sort of fractions you get in the debate about that study about S corporations, which is a specific kind of pass-through income entity, was commissioned by the S Corporation Preservation Trade Group that Ernst & Young did for them. Right. So that's the foundation upon which we are basing all these policy debates.
I'm getting a headache listening to us talk.
Perfect. Nailing it.
And I think that's sort of what happened in the debate, because average people sitting there are trying to figure out how are they going to pay the bills and where can they get a decent job. And they know that the jobs that are out there now aren't paying the bills. They know that inflation's going up, even though it's like 1 or 2%. Buy gas at $4 a gallon, pay for college education, whatever it is. And the talk on small business just obscures what are we going to do in this economy to increase demand. And demand is then going to drive the profitability of small business, just what you said.
We've got a survey of small business owners, which I thought was very interesting. It was conducted by Wells Fargo and the Gallup Small Business Index, and they say to them, why are you not hiring, right? And their number one hiring concern is that the revenues won't justify adding employees. I mean, that there aren't enough people, customers, to sell things to because the economy is not very good. And then you have to go current state of economy, cash flow, ability to make payroll. You have to go all the way down to the bottom of that for new government regulations at 46%.
So after the debate, I spent a lot of time first talking to small business organizations to say, what was your reaction to this? And they had all of these very interesting statistics and big ideas. Then I spent a bunch of time talking to small business owners and saying, what did you think of the debate? And you know what they said? I don't really care. What I care about is how am I going to get more people through my door?
Yes.
How am I going to increase my customers? What's my marketing plan?
I want to talk about some of the groups that represent or speak for small business, like the National Federation of Independent Business, which is another brilliantly Orwellian name. And also, if we focus in on a definition of small business that we can agree on, whether we should really be helping them anyway. Like, is it the case that they play some special role in the economy? Right after this.